One of two things always happen when dudes hear the phrase bust proof. You either think of something super strong, or you get immediate PTSD thinking I interviewed your wife or your girlfriend and your secret's about to get out. Well, in today's show, I've interviewed 15 girlfriends and wives of viewers out there that are saying they ain't seen nothing close to bust proof. Ha! Gotcha. Just kidding. In today's show, we're talking about 7 players in fantasy football that you should consider bust proof in 2023. Now, before we get into the names here today, there's 2 things we have to do first. The first thing is to explain what does it mean to be bust proof. But we also need to make sure that the last thing that you have busting out is hair from any part of your clothing. No one wants to see you walking around town here this summer looking like you're wearing a wool snuggie. It's the summer months. You're supposed to be trimmed up, looking good, smelling good. So head over to manscaped.com because they have everything that you could possibly need to fix that hair problem or that stink problem. Just be sure to use code word headliners at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. But because I'm a nice guy, if this video can get over 1,000 likes, I'm going to give away a bottle of Preserve Cologne, a Manscaped cologne, to a random commenter down below in the comment section. So hit the like button, leave that comment down below. But now let's talk about what does it really mean to be bust proof in fantasy football. Now, typically when you hear the word bust, it's about a player that didn't return draft value, right? You drafted him as the running back 15, he ended as the running back 30, he busted. But what about the guys that you draft so late in fantasy football that even if they don't pan out, it doesn't hurt your team? Can they really be considered busts? Their draft picks that late in the draft for a reason. If they don't work out, you drop them, pick up somebody else from the waiver wire, and move on. So in reality, the only thing that they could really do to your team is help you, right? Because they can't really hurt you. You can swap them out for somebody else. So there's no way that I can look at those guys as fantasy football busts. So the first one we're going to be talking about is a guy like Derek Carr at the quarterback position. And I say that because as of right now, he's quarterback 19 overall. Now, on average, over the last 2 years, the quarterback 19 has scored on average 222 fantasy points in a season. That's the equivalent to about 3,200 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Carr, though, hasn't scored less than 257 fantasy points in a season over the last 4 years. Now, over that span, he's also averaged 4,120 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions a year, which comes out to be an average of 286 fantasy points per season. That average right there is enough to put him verge top 12 every single season. But now he's in a new situation, right? He's no longer in Las Vegas. He's over in New Orleans. But actually, overall, it's probably a better overall offense he'll have this year than he did last year. Sure, Davante Adams last year was great for Derek Carr. But when you look at the overall offense, this probably is going to be better than anything he had in Oakland or Las Vegas. You got Chris Olave. What about Michael Thomas if he's fully healthy? The deep threat and Rashid Shaheed. Maybe Alvin Kamara doesn't get suspended. Jamal Williams, Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill. The list goes on. There's quite a few weapons in New Orleans, not to mention the offensive line that he's going to have this year is probably going to be one of the better ones he's had in his career. At quarterback 19, it's so cheap, I don't see how he could be a bust. Now, do I want him to be my quarterback 1? The only guy on my roster? No, probably not. If you're in a league where you're drafting 2 quarterbacks, more than likely he'll be your quarterback 2. But at this price tag, I don't see how he could bust. But let's look at a couple running backs. What about Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commandos, who's currently running back 35 overall? Now, on average, the running back 35 has scored 125.2 half PPR fantasy points a season. That's the equivalent to about 800 total yards, 5 touchdowns with about 30 receptions or so. Do you care to guess what Antonio Gibson had last year in just 15 games in Washington? 899 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 46 mother-freaking receptions. But I think we can all sit back and look at the situation last year compared to this year and think that it's going to get better, right? We have a new offense in Washington, new offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy over from Kansas City. We know how he liked to use Jerick McKinnon in that offense. Could he use Antonio Gibson in a similar role? Plus, there's no more J.D. McKissick to steal pass-catching work in this backfield. A better offense is going to give more scoring chances as well. And we think he's really going to perform worse than what he did last year? I mean, at the point he's going to be maybe your running back 4 overall on your roster. And can you imagine if Brian Robinson were to go down? Big time volume for Antonio Gibson, a guy who's already going to get work, and he's currently running back 35. I don't see how he busts. Which is also how I feel about Samaje Perine of the Denver Broncos, who's currently running back 38. I mean, we're getting cheaper and cheaper here, right? On average, the running back 38 scores 112 half PPR fantasy points a season, the equivalent to about 750 total yards and 4 touchdowns, 26 receptions. He scored more than that last year in Cincinnati and only started in 3 games. In fact, he had a total of 681 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 38 receptions last season. But now he's in Denver on a team who really wanted him. They made him a priority in free agency in a backfield whose number 1 running back is coming back from tearing almost every damn ligament in his knee. Sure, reports are coming out that he's going to be good to go. We've seen those reports before, but I still haven't seen him 100% on the field. Have you? No, we haven't yet, but does it really matter? Because now he's in an offense with Sean Payton, who we know is used to utilizing more than one running back in his offense. We saw it at times with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram in the past. Samaje Perine can play all 3 downs. He's going to get a ton of volume if we don't have Javonte Williams. He's still going to get volume even if we do have a Javonte Williams in an offense that's going to score more this year than last year. I mean, they kind of have to, right? They were literally one of the lowest scoring teams in the entire NFL last season, and people are going to think that he's going to score less points this year than last year. How about no? Samaje Perine, I don't see him busting. What about Jordan Addison, wide receiver 38 right now? We just talked about the running back 38. It's only fitting that we go to the wide receiver 38, but on average, the wide receiver 38 scores right on 137 half PPR fantasy points per season. The equivalent, 70 catches for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. Addison now joins a team that threw the ball almost 700 times last year and just said goodbye to one of the best running backs in the entire NFL. And that's after they let Adam Thielen go, and then they spent a first-round draft pick on a wide receiver. Why did they do that? To use him. He's an athletic upgrade over Adam Thielen. On top of that, the defensive attention has their hands full with Justin Jefferson. And even Thielen over the last few years has averaged over 70 catches, 700 yards, and 5 touchdowns. With the offense that he's going to be in, with the opportunity he's going to be given, 70 catches for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns is more of a baseline with nowhere to go but up, in my opinion. But what about Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals? This dude right now is wide receiver 57. I didn't think we could get any cheaper, but damn, we keep getting cheaper. On average, the wide receiver 57 only scores 99 half PPR fantasy points a season. Like 50 catches, 500 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But even the last 2 years, splitting between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd has still gone out and averaged 62 catches for 795 yards and 5 touchdowns a year. Not to mention each and every year, it seems like we're going to go through a stretch of the season where Jamar Chase or T. Higgins are just dealing with injuries. Tyler Boyd is like Mr. O'Reliable out there, just benefiting from that. At this point of the draft, you're really looking for guys that have potential in high-powered offenses. Cincinnati, the last time I checked, pretty high-powered offense. We add in the fact that the potential bump in volume he could get if Chase or Higgins were to go down, and he's at wide receiver 57 and basically free on draft day. Sign me up for some Tyler Boyd as being bust-proof. How about Sky Moore, Kansas City Chiefs? I feel like I've talked about him a lot this offseason, but he's still currently wide receiver 62 in the consensus rankings. Are people not even paying attention out there? On average, the wide receiver 62 only scores 92 half PPR fantasy points a season. It's like 50 catches, 490 yards, and 3 touchdowns. For what will be one of the top wide receiver options in a Patrick Mahomes-led offense, and he's sitting at wide receiver 62. We know that Kadarius Toney has struggled staying healthy. MVS is a one-trick pony that does nothing but run go routes down the sideline. Head coach Andy Reid doesn't give big roles to rookies unless he absolutely has to. So I'm not expecting a lot from Rashee Rice this year. Similar to what we didn't see from Sky Moore last year. But now no Mecole Hardman, no Juju Smith-Schuster. A lot more targets going the way of Sky Moore in 2023. There's no way I don't gamble on Sky Moore at wide receiver 62. Sign me up in every single draft at that point. But what about a tight end? Hayden Hurst of now the Carolina Panthers is sitting at tight end 24. Now, tight ends, they don't score very many points to begin with, much less tight end 24. Those dudes barely score more points than me in a season. And I know this may be a shock to you because of the crazy shape that I'm in, but I don't play in the NFL. But in all seriousness, the tight end 24 only scores about 77 points a year. 40 catches, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Hurst has already had limited roles the last couple years and scored numbers similar, if not better than that in each one of them. Now he's in Carolina, whose offense is overall extremely better. They drafted Bryce Young number 1 overall. They brought in Miles Sanders. They brought in DJ Chark. They brought in Adam Thielen. They drafted Jonathan Mingo. Now, we know that rookie quarterbacks like to check down to sure-handed tight ends, and that is exactly what Hayden Hurst is. Now, at the point of the draft and where you're thinking about Hayden Hurst, it's the very end of the draft. And if you're thinking about a tight end, more than likely you didn't snag one of those top-tier guys, and you're trying to wing it with 2 lower-tier guys, just hoping that one of them pans out. At tight end 24 for Hayden Hurst in Carolina, I don't see how he busts. So remember, players can't bust if they're never expected to boom in the first place. These guys are all being drafted so late that even if they don't pan out, it doesn't hurt your team. They're bust-proof players, because if a player is actually going to bust, that means that they had some expectations to boom and didn't. Those ones hurt. These ones don't. Let me know down below in the comment section, what do you feel are some bust-proof players here in fantasy football in 2023? Then don't forget, hit the like button, leave that comment down below. I'll be giving away some cologne to somebody, I'm sure, pretty soon here. But for now, hopefully you have a great rest of your day and do your part to make the world a better place.